So we just got finished making a frequency table and then graphing it to make a histogram in Excel. Now there's another way you can do this using Excel, which is sometimes easier, sometimes trickier. It involves making sure that you have the data analysis tool pack installed in your version of Excel. So if we come over here to File, and then I go down to Options at the bottom, I want to choose Add-ins. And then right down at the bottom it says Manage Excel Add-ins. That's what I want to have selected, and then I want to click Go. So it gives me a list of possible add-ins that are available. The one that I want is Analysis Tool Pack, which is already highlighted up here at the top. I just want to check on that and click OK. And I'll know that it's installed if when I come back here, if I go into the Data tab, I see right over here on the right hand side, Data Analysis. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click on Data Analysis, and it gives me a list of things that can be done here. What we want is we want histogram. We click on OK, and it gives us a series of boxes here. We're going to choose the input range, which is the data that we want to make the histogram of, the bin range, and then it's got a number of options for the output here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click cancel and cancel, and I'm going to use the same bins that we had before. So I'm just going to take this here, highlight it, copy it, and then move down here and paste it, just so we've got another, so we're working a little bit lower down. So let's go back and do this again. So data analysis, histogram's already selected, let's click OK. So input range, I'm just going to click in that box. And actually I'm going to click on this little chart thing beside it, and it pops up this window. So I scroll up a little bit, highlight my data, and then hit enter. All right. For my bin range, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on that little chart selection thing. I'm going to highlight my bins here, and then I'm going to hit enter. I didn't highlight the labels, so I'm not going to click on the label box. Then I'm going to come down here to output range, and I'm just going to click right in here. Well, let's just highlight these cells in here, and that's where it's going to put my, oh, I didn't want to do that because I was in the input range there. So let's fix this again. Let's delete this. Let's reselect our input range up here. Now let's come down. Let's make sure that we are in the output range. So I've clicked in that output range box. I'm going to highlight this area down in here, and that should, there we go, when I click OK. There it gives me my frequency table. So I've got it puts my bins in there, and it gives me the same frequencies that I had before. So sometimes this is a quicker way of getting a frequency table. Also, you can get it to actually make the histogram for you. If we click data analysis again, still on histogram, okay, all of that stuff in there is like the input range, the bin range is all still highlighted in there. We got the same output range. So let's just change that output range to that thing right there. And instead, let's choose chart output here, and then click on OK. And there, it's redone my histogram, but my frequency table, but it's also given me this little histogram here. Now, this histogram isn't really what we want our histograms to look like. So first off, I'm going to get rid of the legend there by going over to, let's see, Chart Tools, Design, Add Chart Elements. Where is my legend? There, no legend. Okay, so that spaces it out a little bit better. We can make this a little bit bigger here. Again, we want our bars in our histogram to be touching each other. So let's go highlight the data series and change our gap width down to nothing. Good. And then we will, let's see, change our border to a solid black line so we can see where one bar ends and where another one ends. Let's see, we want to change our title here. We don't want this to be bin, we want this to be time in seconds, just like it was before. Now we make that change and we've got something that looks almost like that histogram that we had before. Oh, it's called histogram. Let's change the title to Time to Assemble a Tricycle. Or let's just call it Assembly Time this time. So this is almost a good histogram. What's the problem is the way our x-axis here is labeled. It's labeled each of these regions here with the number associated with the bin. So we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and more, and so on and so on. And that's not what each of these bars represent. Each of these bars represents a range of times. So this bar right here, that is above the 10, should really be labeled from 5 to 10. And to do a histogram properly, this point right here at the beginning of that bar should be labeled as 5. This point at the end should be labeled as 10. This next point over here should be labeled as 15, so that this second bar represents the number of times between 10 and 15. So it's the edges of the bars that should be labeled. We can't get Excel to label it really accurately. The best thing we can probably do is kind of shift these axis labels over so that they're closer to these little tick marks here. So what I'm going to do is in my frequency table here, I'm going to highlight these labels that it's using for the bin. Okay, and I am going to format these cells. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to choose Format Cells. And I am going to change these to text. So even though there's a number in there, it's going to treat them as text. Okay, so now notice that it slides them over to the left because it thinks of them as text. And what I'm going to do for each one of these things is I am just going to insert a bunch of spaces before that number. And that's going to push that number over towards the right-hand side on our graph there. So I might need to do a couple more spaces there, come to the end, and hit enter. Okay. So let's see if we can do that for each one of those. So to make this a little quicker, I'm just going to highlight those spaces. I'm going to hit Control C, and then when I come down to number 10 here, I'm just going to go up in front of the 10, and I'm going to do Control V, and there, that kind of slides it over. Okay. So I might need another space in there or something, but that's probably good enough for now. I'm just going to do this to every single one of them. Okay. All right, and there we go. So this isn't perfectly labeled, but it gets across the idea that this first bar here represents from 5 to 10, and this one represents from 10 to 15, and this one from 15 to 20, and this one from 20 to 25, and so on and so on. And I could fiddle around with the number of spaces I put in there to get it to look just the way we want it. But again, this is another way of making a histogram here in Excel. And this looks more like we expect our histograms to look like in terms of having the x-axis labeled.